Crap, I don't know what mythical creature I am. I feel like these are the questions I need to know in life. Hey there, Fiber Junkies! Welcome back to the Color Cauldron. I'm Johanna, the owner and dyer behind Potion Yarns and host of this podcast. If you're a new viewer, thank you for so much for joining us, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. We are going to do something a little bit different today. I haven't done this before on the podcast, but I wanted to for a really long time, so I'm really excited because today we're going to do a Q&A, question and answer time. So a few weeks ago, I put up on my Instagram and Facebook pages and just said, ask me anything, literally anything, and I'm going to pick out questions from that I like. I'm going to try to answer everybody's, but depending on time constraints and such, I'm going to pick the questions that I'm really interested in and answer some questions. So I actually wasn't able to get to them right away because I was traveling the last few weeks for multiple yarn shows and festivals and getting ready for a trunk show and all the craziness at the hair salon, getting ready for Thanksgiving and stuff, which is this week. So if you're in the United States, happy belated Thanksgiving. By the time you get this, Thanksgiving will probably be over. Although I'm thinking about releasing this on Thanksgiving Day, just so you have something to watch in the afternoon when you're, the rest of your family is all sleeping or watching the football game and you're getting in some knitting, and you can sneak your earbuds in and watch this on your phone, right? So I might get it out on Thanksgiving Day, but if not, definitely this weekend. Happy Thanksgiving or happy belated Thanksgiving to those in the U.S. And this is kind of a crazy time of year for everybody, so I thought this would be just kind of a fun, chill, low-key kind of a topic for today. I do have to apologize. I'm going to be sniveling a lot and probably grabbing some tissues from time to time because I woke up this morning with terrible, terrible snivels. So I apologize that I'm running for the tissues all the time, but we'll get through it. We're gonna go ahead and dive right into these questions. So the first caveat I wanted to let everybody know is I am gonna try to get to all of these today, but there were quite a few, so we may not get all of them answered. If we don't get to your question and you did ask me one, please don't despair because I'm keeping a list and I will be answering them at some point, with a few exceptions. A couple of the exceptions are every now and then there'd be a question that was a really great question, but it was more involved than I can do in a quick little Q&A session. These are just for fun, silly little questions and business questions, but things that I can answer relatively quickly, not give a big long explanation on. So if somebody asks how can I get my hand knits to stop bleeding? That took 2 entire videos that I did a few weeks ago. If you missed those, go back and check out how to make sure that there's no color bleeding in your water with indie dyed yarns or any dyed yarns. We talked about how it's not just indie dyed yarns, it's all kinds of yarns. And also crocking, which is dry crocking, when it's coming off on your hands as you craft. So it took 2 full videos to answer those kinds of questions. So there are a couple topics that I'm skipping right now just because they involve their own whole video, or at least a larger section than I have time for right now. The other thing that I'm skipping is I do always get some people asking me for very specific questions, wanting me to explain my dye techniques, tell where I get my yarn sources from, and basically give insider tips and tricks for other business owners. That's not what this is about. So if you have questions about that, there are plenty of other resources on the internet you can go to, but I've said from the beginning, I'm not the person to go to for that. I don't really share my dye techniques. If I'm going to share those with you, I'm going to charge for them and teach a class. I know I did say that you could ask me anything, so this is not at all I'm mad you asked those questions. I'm not mad at all. I just reserve the right not to answer, largely because that's just not what this was designed for. This is just for quick, fun, let's talk a little bit and get to know each other. Okay, so let's see what some of these questions are. So the first one is, what is your favorite finished object you have ever knitted? Why did we have to start with such a hard one, you guys? I don't have just one that is my very favorite. I've knit a lot of things. I've been knitting for about 13 years, I think now. Yeah, I think about 12 or 13 years that I've been knitting hardcore. But I knit a lot. I knit very fast and I knit on multiple projects at once, as we've already seen on this podcast. So I don't actually have one favorite. If I had to, I think it would probably be a toss-up between my Zweig sweater by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks. That is the one I just knit this summer in Ireland with 2 of my hand-dyed colorways, and I've worn it a lot. It's the bright kind of chartreusey green with the white and black and gray speckled yoke, lace yoke. So my Zweig is one of my very favorites. It's partly my favorite because it was so much fun to knit, and it fits me perfectly. It's very flattering, and I wear it all the time, and it feels amazing. And I think one of the things that makes it a favorite too is that I've never in my life seen a Zweig that I didn't like. I've seen all these different color combinations. I look on the Ravelry project page all the time. I see them out in the wild at yarn shows and stuff all the time. And I'm pretty sure I like every single one that I see. I wouldn't always knit every one that I see for myself based on color choices, but I like all of them that I see. And the huge majority that I see, I'm like, I would totally wear that. I would totally knit that. I love that. So I think it's just a really brilliant design, and it lends itself well to a variety of different colors, a variety of different body styles, a variety of different personality and style differences. So that's probably my favorite. Another thing that is one of my absolute favorites is my Orchids and Fairy Lights slouchy hat, which I've worn on the podcast multiple times. It's kind of a beigey colored yarn from Malabrigo that I knit, and it's got little baubles all over it, and it's just it was so much fun to knit. It was interesting and held my interest, but it wasn't like complicated or stressful, and it's one of my most wearable slouchy hats. I love slouchy hats, and it's one of my most wearable. So those are probably my 2 favorites right now off the top of my head. Oh, and I should also mention I did zero prep for this, by the way, other than reading everybody's comments and liking them on social media and being like, oh, that's a good one, I should look that up later, I should give some thought to that. Yeah, I totally didn't. I've been so busy, I didn't even take time. And I kind of thought this would be, my goal with this was to do kind of like we're just going out and getting coffee and getting to know each other, like girlfriends on a date, or like those first date questions when you bring a little list on your first or second date and you just ask like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite memory of a childhood? And they don't really get to know the questions ahead of time, right? So they're just going off the cuff. That's kind of what I wanted this to be. So that's what we're doing. So right now, Zweig and Orchids and Fairy Lights are my favorites. I'm also crazy about the You Rock shawl that I've shown on the podcast recently that I knit just this year as well, by Suzanne Summer. It was so stunning and so beautiful and so much fun. Okay, so the next one is actually coming from Farm Girl Fibers on Instagram, who I got to meet at Fiber in the Borough. It was really fun meeting her. And she says, what's the favorite hair color you've ever had? I get this one all the time as well because I've had most hair colors. I don't actually have a favorite hair color either. It's really too hard for me to pick just one that is my all-time favorite. Usually when people ask me that, I say, the one I have right now, of course, that's why I have it. However, I really think if I had to just pick one and go with that for the rest of my life, it would be the teal and sapphire blue that I did before I started doing the oranges. Back when I very first started this podcast, my very first video, I still have the teal and blue hair. I think my first video, or my first 2 or 3, I still had blue hair for. And then I changed it to like a bright orange, and then it went through several different iterations of orange before it got to where it is now with the shadow root. So before that, for over a year, I had a sapphire blue shadow root that faded into like teal, this gorgeous mermaidy teal, and the ends were kind of like a bright green. And it was probably my favorite hair color. It was super flattering. It really, to me, it just felt like my personality transcribed in color. And I really felt like it was very flattering. I got a million compliments on it. I never felt like I had a bad hair day with that hair color. So I think if I had to go back to just one, that would be my very favorite that I've ever had. But it is really hard picking. Okay, she also asked, what's your favorite mythical creature? So I don't know if I have just one favorite, if I'm being really honest. I thought of 2 that kind of tied as my favorites. The first one is dragons. I absolutely love dragons. I don't know why exactly. I think because I really admire the kind of fire energy. If you think about the different elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and imagine those as being related to people's personality traits, I think of people who have fiery personality traits as very like passionate, very motivated, very driven, very artistic and creative, very quick to get angry, but also quick to change and get not angry again. And surprise, surprise, I might be kind of a fiery personality based on my own description, but I'm really drawn to that kind of energy. And I think I've always really been drawn to the idea of dragons because in like artwork and movies and stuff, they always seem like they have these really gorgeous iridescent type scales, and they can fly, and I've always wanted to ride a dragon. So I don't really have a good reason, I just really like them. And the other one that is tied with dragons as my favorite would probably be a phoenix. And I love phoenix because phoenixes, I don't know what you call multiple phoenix birds, but I love the phoenix because I love the metaphor. So not so much the actual animal itself, but more what it represents is my favorite. I really love the idea of not allowing something that destroys you or could destroy you to be the end of your story, but allowing that catastrophe, that fire, that struggle to be what allows you to rebirth into something greater. And that the idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes is super powerful metaphor. And it's something that personally in my life, I feel like in the last several years, I've gone through multiple phoenix moments where there was something really, really rough happening, and it felt in the moment like the end. It felt like a death of at least something, at least one part of my life or part of me. A couple years ago, I went through a very, very tough personal issue where I literally felt like my personality and my beliefs and my worldview and everything was dying, and I wasn't really sure who I was going to be at the end of it, and it was really scary allowing myself to go through that transformation process and be like, I don't even know what I'm going to be like, and I don't even know if I'm going to like myself or be okay with myself or who I'm going to become when I get out the other side of this. And now that I'm kind of through at least the majority of the fire of that moment, it seems like there's always something coming up, but I got through those moments and really do like who I'm becoming and actually really like myself better now than I used to. It's just really empowering for me, the idea of rebirth and transformation and allowing yourself to continue to grow and allow the pain and the destruction to bring about new beauty and new life. So, long-winded answer, but that's my favorite mythical creatures. So another one that I got asked is kind of more of a hair question, and I'm totally going to allow these. I thought about limiting it to just knitting and business questions and general personality questions, but I was like, being a hairstylist is a huge part of my identity, and I talk about it openly on here all the time, so of course I'm going to get some questions. So somebody said, what is the best color to use for coloring gray hair purple? Excellent question. So I will give you some specific hair color brands because they're available to licensed professionals only. So if you're not a licensed professional, you won't be able to go and buy them. I'm not going to tell you where you can get them either because you have to have a license. If you have a stylist or someone who is licensed, or you are a licensed stylist, you can go look for these brands, and if you have a current license, you can get them. But even more than the brand, I'm just going to tell you up front, I have a couple favorites, but it's not as much the brand, it's how you use it. So there are definitely brands that are better than others though. So the brand I like the best for vivid rainbow colors like purple, blue, green, etc., hands down is Pulp Riot. If you are a licensed professional, you can get Pulp Riot hair colors, and they are the bomb. They're not the cheapest ones on the market, and there's a reason for that, but they're also not astronomically expensive, and they are totally 100% worth it. They last longer, they smell like candy, they're the perfect consistency. They're not too runny, but they're not too thick, and some of the Joico ones are just so thick. I feel like I have to put conditioner in to like make them spreadable, and Pulp Riot is just the perfect consistency. It has the perfect colors. They're the most true to swatch colors that I've come across for Vivids. I really love them the best. However, I don't use them exclusively. I do still have a few other favorites from other brands that I will mix in just like one or two colors here and there. And with Pulp Riot, I tend to mix custom mixed colors, so I don't just grab purple and put it on your hair in most cases. However, Pulp Riot's so pretty, I could and it'd come out great. But I specialize in customized colors. So my clients know that when they come in, the green that I put on their hair is not going to be the same green that I put on the next girl's hair. I do custom formulations for my clients. I like to mix and match a lot. That's where a lot of my artistry comes in. And so, yeah, I love them, but I don't just use them out of the tube. Here's the tricky thing. With gray hair, people always think that if their hair is gray, or that kind of salt and pepper, right? Or if it's white, that it's already light. So it's really easy. They can just put something over it or put a rinse on and it'll hold the color, right? Wrong. Actually, gray hair is tricky to color. It is more resistant than the other colors. Gray hair is actually just an absence of color pigment or melanin in the hair. So, gray is not a color, it's the absence of color, and when we're talking about naturally gray hair at least, and it's also very, very coarse. Most people's gray hair tends to be coarse and the cuticle is tighter, it's harder to get open, it can let go of color quicker. So you absolutely, every time you're doing a vivid color, purple, pink, blue, green, yellow, all the crazy rainbow colors that aren't natural colors, every single time you do one, you have to bleach your hair first and then apply color. It's at least 2, if not 3 or 4 step process. That's why it's so expensive and time consuming to have really well done vivid color hair. So I have a couple clients right now who have gray hair and get purple put in it, naturally gray hair, and we put purple in it. When they come in, usually what I'll do is lighten their hair with bleach or a lightener, a bleach alternative lightener. And then we'll do a treatment, and then we'll put their purple on in a separate treatment, and that's how they get the purple. Depending on how often they come back and how much their hair grows and what type of texture they have. I have a couple ladies that their hair is so white and it's so fine, and even their gray hair is less resistant, that I can do maintenance where I don't bleach their roots. I just put the purple all the way up, but I can only do that 1, maybe 2 times in between, and that's if they're coming every 4 weeks. If they're going longer than that, we have to bleach again. So don't make the mistake so many people do of thinking that gray hair is super easy to color and I can just slap some pink on there and it's good. It's not. It'll wash right out. And if you're a natural blonde, same thing. I'm a natural blonde. My hair's really light naturally. I have to bleach my hair and then put color down to get it to be A, very vibrant, and B, to last longer than 3 or 4 washes. So there you go. Make sure that you are finding someone, if you're thinking about getting your hair done with vivid colors, make sure that you go to someone who is educated, experienced, and passionate about vivids, because it will make a big difference to just your average hairstylist who's like, okay, I guess I can go buy some purple and slap it on your hair. Just make sure you get somebody that knows what they're doing. Okay, next question. If you were a knitting notion, what would you be and why? And are you into vintage knitwear designs? I saw a book recently and immediately thought of you. Okay, so first one, if I was a knitting notion, this is such a good question. Such a cute, fun, get to know you question, and one I've never in my life been asked before. I really think, honestly, if I was a knitting notion, I would be a stitch marker. And I think why is because a stitch marker / progress keeper, I should say, because I think I'm a very goal-oriented person. So I'm always I was just having this talk with my husband the other day on the phone. I always have my eyes on the prize. It's one of my strengths because it makes me focus really well, or stay very focused, so I'm able to accomplish more in a shorter amount of time than a lot of people. I feel like I'm very much a go-getter. Everybody who knows me, usually when they describe me to people or they tell me about myself to me, I keep hearing recurring themes of like, you're always busy and you're so accomplished. You do everything. You've always got multiple projects going and you're always very involved in things. You're always doing a lot. And I'd agree with that. And I think that's because my eyes are on the prize. The downside of that is it tends to make me focus on what I don't have, and so I can get negative sometimes, and so I'm working on that. But because of that focus, that excitement about completing projects, I get ridiculous amounts of thrills when I complete a project. I'm immediately on to the next one then, because I'm just about the accomplishment, and as soon as it's done, I'm bored and I need something new. But I think because of that, the idea of being a stitch marker or a progress keeper, so you can stay where you at, stay focused on where you're trying to get. Because if you're knitting in the round and you've got a progress or a stitch marker that's marking the beginning of your round, you have to know where that is in order to know when to start the next row of the pattern, right? And every time you get around to there, it's like an accomplishment. You're like, oh yes, on to the next thing, on to the next chart, on to the next row. And that's kind of how I live in my life. as well as the fact that I really like the decorative fun stitch markers, not just the little plastic boring ones, but the decorative fun ones you can buy on Etsy that are handmade, that are really cute, like beaded stitch markers or polymer clay, or all the fun things that are just like fun and cutesy and whimsical and bright colored and glittery preferably. Are you into vintage knitwear designs? Oh my God, yes I am. How can I not be? If you guys don't know me, if you're a new viewer and you don't know this about me already, I am obsessed with vintage style, vintage old movies. I grew up watching old movies. I know way more about Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn than I know about Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt. I'm definitely all about old movies. I swing dance, I dress vintage. I love, 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 love vintagey everything. The last question from Instagram was, how much of your professional hair coloring techniques play into your yarn dyeing? Obviously your eye for color is special and unique, but are your dyeing techniques just as unique in your mind? This is a really good question. I don't exactly know how to answer this, so I'm going to give it kind of in two parts. How much of your professional hair coloring techniques play into yarn dyeing? Quite a bit. Here's the areas that I feel like really, really matter when it comes to yarn dyeing and hair dyeing. Principles about needing heat to set the dyes absolutely play into it. Anything having to do with selecting colors, grouping colors, putting colors next to each other, any kind of color work, because it all comes down to color theory. And this is the same with people who are painters or people who are sewers and work with fabric or textile designers or whatever. Anyone who works with color as a living, at some point, even if they aren't technically trained, probably know some of this instinctually, because a lot of it is instinctual to people that are gifted in this way and have a good eye for color naturally, but it's also something you can learn, and it's what you study in art school. If you go to art school for any of the artistic careers like designing fabrics or painting or whatever, you are going to learn the color wheel, you're going to learn color theory, and a lot of those principles of color and design are basic across the board, whatever you're doing. Sculpture, painting, photography, stage design, everything, makeup, hair dyeing, yarn dyeing, knitting, etc. All of those things, there are basic design and color theory principles, and all of those are the most crossover that I see. I also do see some of it in regards to, like I mentioned, heat. When we did the yarn bleeding and crocking on your hands videos, those got kind of sciencey and technical at some points, and I brought in a lot of my experience and told a lot of stories illustrating my points from the hair salon, because that's where I have even more experience, and I thought it was really cool to see how that plays out in hair dyeing and yarn dyeing, and both of these areas of expertise are backing up what I'm saying in the video, explaining why the molecules do this or how this works and why you need acid and heat or whatever. So I definitely see that there's quite a bit. Now, where it does not coincide is the products themselves. Totally, totally different. I believe it or not, I have actually been asked multiple times if I use hair dye to dye my yarns. No, I do not. It is not the same thing at all. For one thing, you're working with literally an entirely different animal when you're working with sheep's wool as opposed to hair. Secondly of all, the yarn has already been sheared and washed and carded and spun and prepared, and all of the many steps it went through before it came to me. I get commercially spun, not hand spun yarns, so by the time it gets to me, it's been through multiple processes already, and it's not still attached to a living thing. When I work in the hair salon, it hasn't been through all those processes, and it's still attached to someone's head, and I still have to keep in mind getting dye not in their eyes, and things that go on their scalp, and the things they're breathing in and that I'm breathing in, and all of these things are going to be different than when I'm doing yarn dyeing. And worst case scenario, I'm not going to like get color in somebody's eye or burn their scalp if I mess up my yarn, right? So there are a lot of things where it does not play out. Also, one of the major differences for me is yarn dyeing is so much easier. So much easier in relation to like with hair dye. I have to keep in mind the underlying pigments, the color of the hair as it is right now, your natural color, any colors you may have put on it in the past, shampoo and products that you're using, all of the things that you're putting in your body, like food and medicine, the hormones, where you are in your period cycle, where you are if you're in menopause or premenopausal, or if you're pregnant right now or you just had a baby, all of those things play into affecting your hair. Whereas with yarn dyeing, I don't have any of those factors that I have to still be considering. It's significantly reduced, and I don't have to worry about that nearly so much. So that's one of the major differences. Now, when it comes to dyeing techniques, she asked also about how I dye techniques. When I very first started, I did not know what I was doing, and I went off of like a half-hour conversation with someone at a yarn festival and some blog posts and YouTube videos online, and then just my intuition. And so not having many tools and not really knowing what I needed to get started, I started by just going to the hair color or the beauty supply store and buying hair color bottles, bowls and brushes, foil, gloves, etc. Basically all the things that I would use for hair dyeing. And I did have in my mind that I was going to use the same techniques for my hair dyeing that I use on yarn. There's a little crossover, especially now because in modern salons, in case you guys haven't heard of it before, balayage or hand painting hair, free hand painting hair is all the rage. It's the most popular type of color that most people are getting right now. That's come in the last several years and become really, really big. And so because I tend to do a lot of that, and I'm very well versed in balayage in the hair salon, that makes hand painting yarn really easy. But again, painting yarn is a lot easier than painting somebody's hair. When I was first starting out, before I had actually opened my business but was getting into the dyeing side a little bit more, I took an online class from another indie dyer, Brenda, over at Fido Designs. I was able to take her very first class actually online, which was super helpful, super interesting, and I think she has a really unique dye style. And so because of that, I was influenced a lot in my early attempts. When I took her class, I was still very, very early in it. I'd only dyed maybe 5 or 6 hanks of yarn before I took her class, believe it or not. And I was trying out different techniques all the time and trying new things and getting new ideas. And then as I was going through her class, I was also watching videos, reading blogs, getting books from my library, researching online, trying things out. But because of that, I tend to work with direct dye powders a lot more than most indie dyers, and I just do things a little differently. And I'm sure some of that is because I believe a lot of it was due to her class. I believe some of it was also due to my background as a hair colorist and also my personal, just my own personal quirky way of doing things. I'm sure had a lot to do with it, but I really think I think there are several basic techniques, and everybody learns at least one or two of those, if not all of them, and then finds their own way to kind of tweak or combine those techniques. And that's how everybody ends up having their own unique style. And that's actually one of the things I've said from the beginning, and the longer I do this, the more convinced I become that I'm right about this. I really don't think that even if somebody had the exact same yarns, the exact same dyes, and my dye recipe in front of them, I do not think anyone else would be able to create my yarns exactly the way I do, unless they had been trained specifically by me as an assistant. Like at some point, someday, I'm hoping to be able to hire an assistant and train them. We'll see about that. That's too far in the future to worry about. But if I was able to do that, I would work really hard to make sure that I had repeatable colorways that I could train someone else to do in my style. But yeah, unless someone's doing like an apprenticeship with me like that, where they're really trying and I'm really working and investing in them and giving them secrets and stuff, I've always been less worried about people copycatting my work than a lot of other dyers, just because I'm like, you know what, I'm too busy making my brand awesome, and I just know that everybody has their own unique style, and no one's going to be completely me. And you know, I like it that way. I like that we all have our different styles. So yeah, I think that my experience as a hairdresser does influence, but I don't know that I can't honestly go in there and tell you that I'm like so radically different because of my hair coloring background. I mean, probably somewhat, but it's hard to say how much. So one of the questions was, I'm always curious where you get inspiration for your colorways from. Are there any unique stories behind what inspired some of your awesome color combos? Great question. So I get inspiration from literally everywhere. Even though it's super cliche and every single person I've ever read an interview of says this, it's 100% true. Nature is great inspiration. I love to go on nature walks, hikes. When I was in Ireland, I took so many pictures that when I was showing my family later, we'd be scrolling through and a picture would come up. Like every 4 or 5 pictures, there'd be another picture of just like rocks on the ground or my foot in a puddle. And they're like, what is this? What's the significance? And I'm like, it's color inspiration. Keep going. That's for yarn. Keep going. Like, I took probably more of those photos than any other photos. I love nature inspired. I love to go on nature walks, look around, see the trees, etc. There's so many layers of color in nature, so it is really inspiring. It's cliche, but it's true. But also, I get a ton of inspiration from my hair dyeing at the hair salon. If you guys have followed my Instagram or Facebook for some time now, you will have noticed from time to time I'll put up a picture where on one side of it you'll see a client from the hair salon whose hair I colored. Recently I did one that was purple with some pinks and bright little kicks of neon yellow. And then I did my 90s tracksuit colorway. Was actually, it wasn't directly inspired. I didn't set out to recreate that hair color, but she had brought me pictures of a bunch of 90s things. And so that's where it came from. And then I guess I just had that on the brain because I went home the next day and started dyeing yarn, and I came up with Acid Trip and 90s Tracksuit, which are actually quite similar colorways because I was working off of this inspiration trying to get something that just felt right. And I loved both of them, but I kept going and ended up taking it another direction. But I kept both of those recipes because I loved them. And then I put up 90s Tracksuit next to her hair and was like, hey, look, they kind of match. And everybody just loves it when I do that. I've done that with several yarns over the years and over the 2 years that I've been doing it. And people always love seeing the hair inspiration as well. So I also get color inspiration a lot from movies. Every time I get names for colorways from movies a lot too. So I keep a list of names or words or phrases that inspire me from movies, books, TV shows, conversation, just words I think of, etc. And movies is a big one for that. But also color inspiration can come from anywhere. Fabric samples, my cat's fur, the eyes of someone that I'm speaking to, my husband's smile, the flowers in our garden, the color someone painted their nails, something that my client says. More often than not, believe it or not, I actually associate colors a lot with moods and feelings. So many of my colorways, when I set out to create something new, I often am going for a particular feeling, and I want to feel a certain way when I look at the color. And so that's why with 90s Tracksuit and Acid Trip, two very bright neon colors, those were early prototypes for the collaboration I did with Chelsea of Darn Yarn MN. And the end result, Fortune Teller, was what I came up with after like 4 or 5 false starts. And some of them never made it into the shop. Some of them and got overdyed or given away or whatever. Some of them did, as in Acid Trip and 90s Tracksuit, but the first 2 prototypes, Acid Trip and 90s Tracksuit, were awesome, but they were too neon-y and they were too jarring and they were too like cartoonish, and I wanted something a little more mystical and a little more like sexy and kind of mysterious, but also kind of funky, and Fortune Teller came about and it was the right one. If you want more yarn colorway inspiration stories, I've done a couple already over on my IGTV channel, which is the Instagram add-on app. You can get the IGTV app, or if you have an iPhone at least, and I think it's also on Android, but it's certainly on iPhone, in the Instagram app, you can click on the little orange circle in the right-hand corner at the top of your screen that has a TV icon on it. Looks like an old-fashioned TV with rabbit ears. You can click on that and it'll take you to IGTV, or if you are in my profile, you can go to my profile, click on mine, and in the bio section, underneath my bio and my website link, there will be a little like IGTV link that you can click on just to see my channel. And it's a really great way. I use mine as like a vlog. So I do post some of the videos to Facebook as well, but I don't post all of them to Facebook. So if you're liking the little videos and you only follow me on Facebook, please go follow me on Instagram and check out my IGTV channel, because I try to do at least 1 video a week, and more often than not I try to do multiple videos a week. And they're super short. They're usually under 10 minutes. 15 I think is the longest, but I try to keep them 5 to 10 minutes, and they're just little vlogs. So I'll show like what I'm doing today. Sometimes it's Phoebe being cute, sometimes it's what I'm knitting, sometimes it's not anything to do with knitting, it's just me walking around. Recently I did one walking around Kansas City downtown on a Friday night and just talking about how much I love my city and showing off a little bit of downtown KC. So if you're looking for more information on me, my day-to-day in my business, my background, you want to just get to know me better, my vlog is an excellent way to do that, and right now I'm using that through IGTV. I will occasionally put some of that on here. So We're just gonna have time for like one more question, I think, and then I'm gonna do probably the rest of these in another video next week. So the last question is actually not one that I got specifically on this thread, but it's one that I've gotten in person at yarn shows. I've gotten on my Instagram and my Facebook multiple times, and it's something that I really am passionate about, so I just wanted to include it. So this is kind of like over the last 2 years I've gotten this question a ton, so I'm just kind of distilling it all into one, and that is, you say you dance, tell us more about that. What do you dance, what do you do? So if you don't know, I am a swing dancer, as I mentioned earlier. I got into swing dancing a long time ago. Actually probably about 11 or 12 years ago. So when I was in high school, as I mentioned, I grew up watching old videos, and one of my family's favorite genres was old musicals. So Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, all of those type of people were my very, very favorites growing up. I loved all the old musicals. My favorite era is the late 40s and early 50s, and even some of the World War II era, early 40s musicals. I just love that era, but I also like some of the really early ones in the 30s, 20s and 30s, and some of the later ones as well. But watching that, I always wanted to dance. I just knew in my heart and soul that I was a dancer. But my family was kind of conservative growing up, and everyone in my family was just more like, they were very musically inclined, but it was instruments. We sing and or play an instrument. So when I was really little, I learned to play the piano. I took piano lessons, didn't really stick with it. Then I took flute lessons in junior high and high school, loved that, stuck with it for 7 years, loved it. But that whole time I really wanted to dance. And my mom put me in ballet when I was really tiny. And it just didn't stick. And because my teacher moved away. It would have probably stuck longer had she not moved away. But after 6 months, my teacher moved away, out of state. And my mom she says she couldn't find another good place that they could afford. That's entirely possible, but it seemed like she just wasn't that into me dancing anyway. She really wanted me to take piano lessons. So that's kind of how that all worked out. We ended up not doing anything more about it. In hindsight, I'm kind of glad, because ballet is a totally different animal than what I got into later, so I'm not sure that would have been the right choice for me, but we ended up not doing anything on it. And then in high school, I took a couple group ballroom dance classes and fell in love, but couldn't really stick with it. And then through that, I was able to meet someone who invited me to a dance night at another ballroom that was all swing, and he was like, it's all young people. Because when I started dancing, I was going to a ballroom on Friday nights for a group lesson, and it was like everyone there was 50 or older, and I was the only high school kid and the little guy I would drag with me sometimes. So when someone invited me to a dance that was all young people, high school, college age, and a little bit older, and all swing dancing, I was there. And I fell in love immediately. You didn't need a partner. The lessons were super beginner friendly. It was a great atmosphere, fun music. I loved the style. And it was less formal than ballroom swing. It was more what I call street style swing, where it's just very much more less formal and more free and fun and open to improvisation and personal expression. So I got into it, started going every single week, and after about a year of going every week to the group classes and every single week to the dances, I auditioned and made it onto a swing dance performance team called the Swingsters. I danced and performed with them for about 4 or 5 years within 2 or 3 years, I was on the board of people from the team who was kind of running the team, and kind of as a fringe member, I was the costume director. And then I eventually, over time and people moving in and out of leadership, I ended up assuming the role of leadership about 4 to 5 years into being on the team. So for about 5 years or a little over, I was one of the leaders of the team with the other board members. And after 10 years, I just retired this summer, which I'm very sad about, but Potion Yarns is doing so great, I have to do that now. So I still love dancing. I try to get out as much as I can. Unfortunately, lately I've been so busy I haven't gotten to go social dancing as much as I would like, but I am trying to do it at least a few times a month. My goal is to get back to doing it at least once a week, if not twice. But sometimes I go through seasons where I can only get it in once or twice a month. And so I just try to keep it open and doing that. So I highly encourage anybody who has not tried swing or ballroom dancing or salsa before to give it a try. It's amazingly fun. And just because swing dance is my thing doesn't mean that'll be yours. So try the different styles. There's ballroom that has like foxtrot, waltz. There's all the Latin styles, cha-cha, mambo, samba. There's salsa dancing is kind of, it is a ballroom, kind of like swing. It's a ballroom dance, but there's also like street style salsa that you can go to just salsa clubs, and it's a little bit less formal and a little more Latin-y and fun. I do enjoy salsa dancing, but it's not really my thing. Swing is definitely where my heart is and where I love the most to hang out. Although I do love a good Viennese waltz when I get the chance. So yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys a little bit of what I do. So I have a really low lit, not great quality video from my dance last Friday night. Before my birthday, I went out dancing. There is a place here in Kansas City. If you're local, you should come to the Chesterfield. It's downtown KC-Mo, 5 minutes from my house, which I love. And every Friday night, unless they have a private event, which is not very often, so every Friday night they will have a swing night where there is a free beginner lesson at 8:30 p.m. It's only a half an hour, and it just covers super, super basics. It's not probably ever going to make you amazing at it, but it's a really good like icebreaker social, and it's designed for people who've never stepped on the dance floor before. So it's really good at helping someone who has absolutely no clue what they're doing and thinks they couldn't dance in a million years. It's a great way to get you just started. So they have a free lesson at 8:30, and then at 9 o'clock the dancing starts and goes till midnight, and it's way fun. Way, way, way fun. I also love going dancing at Melange Dance here in Kansas City on Thursday nights. That is a West Coast swing only night. So, little trivia. I could talk all night about swing dancing, and if you guys would like me to do a video on swing dancing where we interviewed local dancers, go to a couple dances and show you what it's like, and I show you the different styles, please leave me a comment below, because that's one of the things I am thinking about doing on this channel, is doing just a fun little dance exclusive video where you can see into another area of my passion that also does inspire colors and names for yarn. But yeah, I love to do West Coast swing. There are different styles of swing, and there's actually more than the ones I'm going to tell you about right now, but I do 3 main styles: East Coast, West Coast, and Lindy Hop. I also do Charleston. I do a little bit of Balboa. I am starting to learn shag, although there's a couple. I do collegiate shag. I actually don't really care for Carolina shag, and if you're a Carolina shag fan, please don't hate me for that. I probably just don't know it well enough, but I just can't get into it. But of those ones, Lindy Hop is by far my favorite, with East Coast and West Coast kind of being tied as a second favorite after that. So, and I do a lot of Charleston as well. So I really love those, but I wanted to show you guys a little bit of Lindy Hop swing that I'm doing. In this video, I'm dancing with one of my best friends, Jake. He is one of the swingsters. He is actually the guy who took over my role of leadership when I left the team this summer. He was already on our board and was kind of like my number 2, helping me out running practice and stuff. And he stepped up and really took on he's sharing it with the other board members, of course, but he is kind of taking the active role of leading practices and stuff, which is one of my main responsibilities when I was there. And he's also one of my best friends, and we've performed, competed together, and had a lot of fun together. We just love dancing together. So I'm gonna drop in this short little video.
Get it.
So I hope you guys had a really good time with that. I had so much fun making that video. And like I said, I would really love to do more videos where I can show you guys a little bit more of my dance world, my dance family, as I call them. The dance community is pretty tight-knit, and I am pretty active in the dance scene here in Kansas City, although I have had to take a few steps back the last 6 months, which I'm not happy about from that perspective, but I am really happy that Yarn is doing so well. But right now it's getting a little tricky blending them, but I would love to do a video where we interview dancers here in Kansas City, show some of the places you can go dancing, talk to people, and just have a really good time. So if you're interested in that, please leave me a comment below. Also, if there's any other topics that you want me to cover, please let me know. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and also I'm still taking questions. I have a list of a bunch of other ones that we're going to do next week's video. But you can still feel free to leave me some questions below if you want me to answer something, and I will try to include it. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are in the world, and let's hope that I'm not stocked up next week when I make my video. See you later, guys. This is now time to cast off. Love you.